The Terran Space Academy is dedicated to the advancement of space science and the preparation of humanity to expand into the solar system. We have completed research in radiation tolerance and expected exposure during colonization of the Moon and Mars, artificial gravity systems, and advanced propulsion methods. We have tried to develop a format of relating to you not what might be possible, but what technological leaps have been made and could be applied to the future of space colonization. In this respect, and in our lives, we endeavor to adhere to the principles of scientific inquiry. The difference between science and opinion is that to be true science, the evidence to support a theory must be observable by independent researchers, reproducible in the laboratory, vetted in open and honest debate, and predictive. If a theory cannot meet these criteria, then it cannot be accepted as true. It might later be proven true. We don't dismiss it as impossible without evidence proving the assertion that it is impossible. But we do not believe that for which there is insufficient evidence. That is what has lifted us out of the Dark Ages. That is why we don't burn witches in countries that accept the scientific principle. But something very troubling has been in the news recently, and I think it would be interesting to discuss this, with the understanding that people will have very strong opinions on this subject, and the mere mention of it in the past was enough to damage a scientific career. Now, this should not be so. A true scientist should be able to research any area of interest, apply the tools of the scientific method, and present their findings. This has not been true when it comes to the following subject. We are going to watch excerpts of recent news articles and then try to analyze the possibilities, applying science, logic, and reason. We usually don't do current technological and science news. We leave that to those whose skill in presentation of those topics far exceeds our own. We try not to let political considerations influence our presentations. We want our courses to be informative and up-to-date, but we want to be able to prepare the intelligent, interested student for a future in the space industry. Though new technologies will be developed, the information in our courses will always be scientifically true, even as better technologies are created and our current theories are corrected. Scientific truth is like firing an arrow at a constantly expanding target. It will look like you hit the dead center until the evidence expands enough to show you that there is room for improvement. Newton wasn't proven wrong in most respects by Einstein, so much as proven incomplete. Newtonian physics are still used in a launch to the moon. But without Einstein, we would have been unable to communicate with the Cassini space probe around Saturn. So today we take a deep dive into a series we will call Deep Space Anomalies. These will be subjects that deserve some discussion, even if we don't have all the answers yet. Please watch the following videos.
Some breaking and potentially explosive news today, which is that the UFOs Commission, basically within the Pentagon, will be giving some findings and reportings to the Senate Intelligence Committee. This unit is inside the Office of Naval Intelligence. Now, Senator Marco Rubio saying that it's important for the public in order to find out more. But the real bombshell here is actually an interview in the New York Times by a man named Eric Davis. He's an astrophysicist who worked on the subcontractor and a consultant for that program since 2007. Now, Mr. Davis had this to say. He now works for Aerospace Corporation. He said he gave a classified briefing to the Defense Department agency as recently as March about retrievals from, quote, off-world vehicles not made on this Earth. So,
what?
There you go.
That is crazy.
He said he gave classified briefings on retrieval of these unexplained objects to staff members of the Senate Armed Services Committee on October 21st, 2019, and to staff members of the Senate Intelligence Committee 2 days later. So we are going to need to see the transcript of those documents, and I'm going to call for Marco Rubio in order to release all of that.
We need full transparency here.
Yeah,
the people need to know.
Absolute full transparency. But this is a bombshell accusation. And as far as I can understand, this is the first revelation about the most recent testimony given to the Senate Intelligence Committee regarding this matter ever since the story was broken open in the Times back in 2017.
Right. Well, and you recall this all came from, you had a number of military pilots who were seeing these unexplained objects
and all that.
And
The U.S. Navy has finally acknowledged that videos appearing to show UFOs flying through the air are real. They don't call them UFOs. They call them unidentified aerial phenomena. The several videos they're talking about were recorded years ago by fighter pilots. Then in 2017, they were made public by the New York Times. More now from our Randy Kay.
Look at that thing. It's rotating.
Images of that rotating thing captured by U.S. Navy aircraft, sensors locking in on the target. Commander David Fravor saw it firsthand during a training mission, describing it like a 40-foot-long tic-tac, maneuvering rapidly and changing direction.
And as we both looked out the right side of our airplane, we saw a disturbance in the water and a white object, oblong, pointing north.
The object was first sighted in 2004, then similar objects again in 2015. Footage of the sightings, declassified by the military, weren't made public until December 2017 by the New York Times and a group that researches UFOs.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.
This was extremely abrupt, like a ping pong ball bouncing off a wall. The ability to hover over the water and then start a vertical climb from basically zero up towards about 12,000 feet and then accelerate in less than 2 seconds and disappear is something I had never seen in my life.
The Navy says it still doesn't know what the objects are, and officials aren't speculating. A Navy spokesman simply confirming to CNN the objects seen in the various clips are unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs. The UFO reports were first investigated by a secret $22 million program, part of the Defense Department budget, that investigated reports of UFOs. The program has since been shut down, but it was run by a military intelligence official who told CNN they found compelling evidence that we, quote, may not be alone.
Now understand my consternation when I watched that last video. I am a veteran of both the United States Marine Corps and the United States Air Force. I don't think they would say these things lightly. I have always been intrigued by astrobiology and have gone to the trouble of earning a certificate in astrobiology. While I have always considered it reasonable to assume that life would have evolved on other planets in our galaxy, I have also known enough about evolution to understand that the chance of a planet ever producing a technologically advanced civilization is extremely remote. Many of our humanoid ancestors had bigger brains than us, yet advanced technology was not developed by them. Dolphins have more raw brain power than we do, but get along quite well without tools, and fire is tough to master in the ocean. So when I see the military talking about unidentified aerial phenomenon and off-world craft, I am intrigued. First, understand that the use of the term UAP, or unidentified aerial phenomenon, is to avoid the use of the term UFO, possibly to not get beaten up by Congress, possibly to avoid Freedom of Information Act inquiries. UFOs? Nope, nothing on that in our files. It's called plausible deniability, and the U.S. government has perfected it. We don't assassinate people. Now we may infiltrate and encourage factions of freedom fighters in that nation to revolt against their leader, giving them weapons, money, and intelligence, and they assassinate the leader, but us? We didn't do it. So where does this leave us? 1. The U.S. government has always denied the existence of any evidence supporting the existence of extraterrestrial life having visited Earth. And I, for one, found this plausible. It is extremely hard to maintain secrecy. The more explosive a revelation, the harder it is to get people to stay quiet. The exposed secrets from the past, Watergate, the Church Commission, COINTELPRO, the Snowden revelations, and the Panama Papers, reinforce that hardly anything known to a government stays hidden forever. But my friends and family who believe that we have been visited by extraterrestrials will argue, the fact that there have been leaks and we are discussing it proves that they were not able to keep it under wraps. Okay, as a scientist, I would be negligent to not at least evaluate what has been said by the government concerning this subject and what the Pentagon indicates it may soon release about an off-world craft. Let's look at the facts as we know them. The U.S. Navy has admitted that aircraft far superior to their own have been reliably observed several times. Does this necessarily mean it must be extraterrestrial? Let's take a hard look. Now, it is a fact that in 1947, a newspaper reported that an alien craft had crashed and been recovered on a ranch outside Roswell, New Mexico. Now, I don't have to be a fake news advocate to put forward the suggestion that not everything reported in a newspaper is accurate. I know from experience that reporters often simply print what they are told by the authorities or police. Very rarely do they critically examine what they've been told. Reporters also have two competing interests. They want to be shocking and truthful. Contrary to what you might have heard, being caught lying as a journalist is devastating to their career. And it should be. The same with scientists. You can lie all you want, but you cannot hold a position of trust if you are going to try to deceive us. This doesn't mean you'll never be mistaken or wrong. It is endemic in science and journalism that what seemed absolutely correct today may be proven false tomorrow. We should never fear correction. That is how science works and how we continue to get closer to the center of that target, even as it is forever expanding. Now, when I first heard this story, my initial question was, how did it crash? How would a civilization capable of interstellar travel come all that way and then botch the re-entry? If they came from the nearest star system, Alpha Centauri perhaps. Alpha Centauri is 4.7 light years from Earth, or about 13,000 astronomical units. 1 AU is the average distance from the Earth to the Sun. Alpha Centauri is remarkably close to our Sun in size, being 1.1 solar masses. There are planets around this star and healthy debate on whether any of them could be habitable. If a visitor came to our planet from this nearest star system, they would have to have technology at least 100 years ahead of ours. They would have to rapidly accelerate to near light speed without being crushed, coast at that high velocity for around 5 years, then decelerate and swing by to say hello. Let's assume they have the technology to nullify the Higgs field that is mediated by the recently proven to exist Higgs boson particle, and they're not freezing themselves or putting themselves in some form of stasis to take a slow trip. Let's assume that their ship goes from 0 to near light speed almost instantaneously and that somehow they survive this. Not at light speed. Time would stop in the ship at light speed and you couldn't turn off your Higgs field nullifier. Let's call it a Higgs field suppressor. And add in the old Star Trek inertial dampener so they don't end up painting the walls with themselves on impact. Now time slows on your ship at velocities near light speed, reducing the need for lots of supplies on your voyage. If you approach but don't exceed light speed, you haven't broken any laws, so the trip might only seem to take a month or so. Let's ignore the fact that every dust particle you encounter at this speed will impact with the force of an atomic bomb, and that even the light rays coming toward you are blue shifted into high-powered gamma rays. Let's assume they have a forward projected energy field to clear a path and can shield against the galactic and velocity-induced radiation. Now they arrive at Earth. What brought them here? It wasn't the first atomic bomb test at Alamogordo. This was in 1945, and the light from that explosion would only be halfway to Alpha Centauri by 1947. Assuming the Earth was aligned perfectly so that they could see the explosion from the planet in the first place. Now they are in orbit and say to themselves, we can cross interstellar space, but we forgot to make instruments capable of observing these primitives from orbit. Let's go down and take a closer look. Then what? They crashed? A ship capable of interstellar travel would have to have an advanced artificial intelligence. No biological organism could process information and react fast enough to pilot a vessel going near light speed. And this AI lost control in atmosphere? That seems preposterous to me. I have friends who say maybe we shot it down, and I say, with what? This was 1947. It would be like firing an arrow at a B-2 bomber. It just doesn't seem possible. What could make a spacecraft this advanced crash? Only another spaceship equally advanced. Maybe they were breaking quarantine. Maybe factions of one species or two or more different species disagree on whether we should be left alone or contacted. Maybe one group watched our television shows and said, quarantine for 1,000 years. And another group caught some Mozart on the radio and said, we can't ignore the contribution to our culture they could add. Who knows? I do know that any ship capable of interstellar travel could observe us from orbit and not have to expose themselves in the atmosphere. I also know that nothing we had in 1947 could possibly be a threat to a ship like this. I also know that if they exist, they don't mean us any harm, or we would be gone. I have never understood why a movie like Signs with Mel Gibson could spend millions on special effects and neglect to hire a local high school science teacher to ask about the premise of the story. Let me get this right. We are aliens coming to dominate the Earth. Why? We don't say. It is ludicrous that they would be able to eat our food or us. Evolution reaches many decision points that are decided by chance. We use right-handed sugars and left-handed amino acids. Is that the only way? We don't know, but it's doubtful. Now, life on Earth uses about 20 to 21 of the around 100 possible amino acids that we know of. It is not unreasonable to presume that life elsewhere might use a different combination of it, which means that taking a bite out of us would be toxic for them. Then don't get me started on them being allergic to water, and not wearing a spacesuit, or at least carrying an umbrella to a planet with 75% of its surface covered in water. And they are still able to walk around nude in our atmosphere, which has water in it, while allergic to water. A species with the intelligence and reason to travel across interstellar space would not be that stupid. Maybe the ones dropped on the planet were the ones who snored in their sleep on the ride over. In any event, it may be movies like this that make them not want to contact us. But if the aliens wanted us gone, and they have the technology to cross that distance, they would just redirect a large asteroid and sit back. If Bruce Willis didn't get there in time, we would be gone. So if anyone is here, they are at least somewhat benign. They would have to be interested in us culturally to even bother, because there is nothing here that they would need. Remember Oblivion with Tom Cruise? They want to process the ocean water for deuterium, if I remember correctly. The moon is covered in helium-3, and they had to go right past 2 worlds over 4 times the mass of Earth, made of a bunch of deuterium and helium-3, Uranus and Neptune. None of it makes any sense. If they were extraterrestrial, we would not see them unless they wanted us to. Now perhaps they are from one of the ocean worlds around Jupiter or Saturn. Most likely we would have seen them coming in by telescope, but not absolutely. Maybe there's some civilization under the ice out there. And when we send probes to go look at them, we find out that they've already been sending probes to take a look at us. So if we are seeing anomalous spacecraft operating within Earth's atmosphere, and they aren't extraterrestrial, where might they be from? Now, I pride myself in being a skeptic, but when your skeptical explanations become too convoluted, you run the risk of cutting yourself on Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is still preferred. What is the simplest explanation? I have heard it opined that the pilots were simply wrong. They mistook camera anomalies or something else for a 40-foot-long craft whose passage was disturbing the ocean under it. 2 pilots, in fact, witnessing the same phenomenon. Now, whatever you think of America's military adventures, let me assure you that you do not get to fly a multi-million-dollar supersonic jet fighter armed to the teeth without being an exceptional human being. You have been screened for every psychological or physiological abnormality. You're able to rapidly distinguish between friendly and enemy aircraft during a dogfight at incredibly high speeds. No, I do not accept that men capable of landing on an aircraft carrier could be mistaken about whether they saw a craft or a lens flare. They saw something that looked like a craft convincingly enough for them to endanger their careers to report it to their superiors. Probably because they had the footage to back it up. I guarantee you that without the footage, they would have said nothing. All the Apollo astronauts saw bright flashes in their vision, but withheld the information from each other and NASA until they discussed it among themselves and realized they were all seeing it. No one wants to be called crazy, and reporting a UFO is one of the fastest ways to be labeled crazy in our society. So if they are not from another planet, where else could they be from? Could a nation here on Earth develop aircraft so advanced that the United States military can't even figure out how it operates? That is very unlikely. Still more plausible than extraterrestrials. There are always rumors that the Nazis had super secret craft that they used to flee Germany and live on the moon. But the question must be asked, why would they leave Hitler behind? And why wouldn't they use these to win the war? It makes no sense. China and Russia are advanced, but they could not develop something of this capability without the U.S. intelligence services knowing they had. They also wouldn't be flying them around US F-14s. The fact that the U.S. government is chatting about it on TV tells us something. If they believed there was any possibility of these craft being from an Earth nation, they would keep the fact that they knew something up secret, so the enemies of the U.S. could not ferret out their espionage networks. So to me, the fact that the Pentagon is discussing it openly on the news indicates that the U.S. intelligence community is confident that no other nation has a clue what these things are either. Could they be from an advanced civilization here on Earth unknown to the rest of us? The chance of a highly developed Earth civilization rising so long ago that all records and trace are lost is so unlikely as to be nearly impossible. What about a current one? Wakanda, perhaps? This is perhaps more likely than an interstellar visitor, but the Pentagon spokesman mentioned knowledge of an off-world craft. Did they find a derelict crashed alien ship on the moon? How would they know it was from off-world? The elements are pretty much the same on every planet, but we can tell whether rocks came from Earth or Mars by isotope variations and mineral differences. Maybe the ship is made of an iridium or osmium alloy, metals only found in space or in meteors on Earth. Could there be an underwater civilization of intelligent beings that have been hidden all this time? Human beings do have an unusual diving reflex, and there are other hints of an aquatic past. Did some branch of humanity adapt to living underwater and stay hidden from us all this time? Very unlikely, unless their technological advancement included genetically engineering themselves some gills and the ability to withstand enormous pressure. There have been reports of unknown submerged objects moving at high speeds and reports of UFOs entering and leaving the ocean surface. It would be a good place to hide if you wanted to avoid detection, whether you were from Earth or somewhere else. But we do have advanced anti-submarine technology that should detect activity of this magnitude, but maybe not. We must be open to the possibility until we have disproven it, but we can't believe it unless there is clear and convincing evidence. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and we don't have that. Where else might they be from? What about the future? Time travelers from the far future, here to study history. Then why would they allow themselves to be observed and risk changing their present? How would they not know that they would be spotted by analyzing our news from this period? Unless a catastrophe wipes out all knowledge of this time, and only a few humans survive to rebuild civilization over thousands of years. And now they want to know about their lost past and get in their time machine, and what? Hang out near an American warship? That is not the safest thing to do. Surely even in the far future they can recognize a large-bore cannon or a missile system. Maybe they're from another dimension, or an alternate universe like Sliders. If something is out there with these capabilities and we see them, we must assume they wanted to be seen and are observing our reactions. Or perhaps the Pentagon is putting this out and observing our reactions. So is the Pentagon about to tell us about absolute proof of the existence of alien life? I still doubt it. I hope they will, but I don't yet believe it. But I do want to know the truth. Come on, guys. If you've got something to say, get it out there so we can know. Thanks for listening. Give us feedback. If you enjoyed this speculative update, let us know and we'll try to do one from time to time. As always, stay safe and take good care of yourselves and each other.